Evelyn ran a hand over the wooden table as she passed, her fingers brushing against years of memories built into the grain. She had polished that table with her husband after they moved into the house. Now, it just stood there, quiet, still, watching time go by. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and stepped out onto the porch. The evening air carried the scent of pine and freshly turned soil. Her boots made soft clicks on the steps as she walked toward her daughter's car. Denise had sent someone to pick her up, her assistant, not herself. Evelyn had dressed carefully for the birthday dinner. A navy blue blouse with pearl buttons, her late husband's favorite. She fixed her hair, dabbed on light powder, and even wore a brooch Denise gave her years ago. As she sat in the back seat of the car, she kept her hands folded and told herself it would be a good night, a kind night. The restaurant was in town, one of those trendy places with Edison bulbs and mismatched chairs. Evelyn stepped inside and felt like a ghost in a gallery. Music pulsed softly, glasses clinked, and laughter floated like smoke. Denise spotted her, waved lazily, and called, "Mom, there you are." Evelyn walked over and smiled. Denise stood surrounded by friends, most of them much younger, dressed in bright patterns and expensive jewelry. Evelyn nodded politely, offering quiet hellos as she found her seat at the far end of the table. Dinner went on with fast chatter and long pours of wine. Denise held court like a queen, talking about her business, travel plans, and new kitchen renovations. Evelyn stayed quiet, only chiming in when someone asked how long she'd lived on the farm. "Since before Denise was born," she said with a soft smile. "My husband and I built the place with our own hands." Denise rolled her eyes gently. "She's told that story 100 times. A few chuckled. Evelyn sipped her whey, ate her and looked down at the linen napkin in her lap. Later in the evening, a friend raised a glass and said, "To Denise, still fabulous and forward-moving." Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. Denise smiled and added, "And to my lovely mother, who reminds us all of where we came from and how far we've come." The table laughed. Someone said, "A toast to the past," and then Denise laughed and said it, lightly, like a joke. "She is the past." The room didn't freeze. Nobody gasped. They just laughed again, small, harmless, hollow laughs. Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Denise, but Denise had already turned back to her drink, distracted by a phone buzz. Evelyn smiled faintly and took a sip of water, even though her throat was dry. She didn't say a word. She just sat there, still, small, present in body, but invisible in spirit. Later, when the bill came, someone suggested taking a group photo. Evelyn stepped out of the frame, said the lighting wasn't flattering. Denise didn't notice. The assistant dropped Evelyn off just after 10. She walked up the porch steps slowly, hand gripping the rail tighter than usual. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon from the potpourri she had left simmering. She hung her shawl on the hook and stood there in silence. The laughter from the restaurant echoed in her mind, followed by Denise's voice, sharp, polished, and careless. "She is the past." Evelyn pressed her fingers into her temples, then walked into the kitchen. The old kettle waited on the stove, just as she had left it. She lit the burner and waited for the flame to catch. That night, she sat at the kitchen table in silence. No tea, just stillness. Her eyes scanned the room. Every corner told a story. Every wall carried his touch. They had built this home together, brick by brick, nail by nail. Now it was just her. The next morning, Evelyn watered her potted basil on the windowsill and listened to the birds. Her thoughts drifted to Denise's face, her laugh, her words. The sharpness of them still stung, more than she wanted to admit. She pulled out a notepad and started writing a grocery list. Milk, eggs, flour, silence. She stopped. folded the paper, and stared out the window for a long time. Later that afternoon, Evelyn went out to check the mail. Bills, a catalog, and something addressed to Denise, accidentally delivered to her old home address. Evelyn turned it over in her hands. It was from a real estate agency. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a letter. Following up on our recent consultation regarding the valuation of the property at 514 Willow Lane. Her breath caught. Willow Lane. Her home. Her land. The letter mentioned a second viewing scheduled for Tuesday, with her daughter. Evelyn sat on the porch step, letter in hand, heart pounding. She stared out across the field, wide, golden, peaceful. And she realized something. They weren't just calling her the past. They were trying to erase her from the future. The next few days passed in slow silence. Evelyn moved through the house like a ghost in her own memory. She watered the porch plants, folded her linens, baked cornbread no one would eat. She didn't say much to anyone, not even Alma when she called to check in. Because how do you explain that your own child laughed at you like you were history? Not family, not home, just history. Evelyn kept the real estate letter tucked between pages of her recipe book. She hadn't confronted Denise, not yet. She told herself it could still be a mistake, a misunderstanding. Maybe Denise was helping a neighbor. Maybe the agency got the address wrong. But that hope grew smaller with each passing hour. Saturday evening, Denise called. "Hey, Mom. Thought I'd stop by tomorrow morning around 9. You'll be up, right?" Evelyn pressed the phone to her ear, her voice soft. "Of course. I'll make tea." "Perfect," Denise said. "We might bring something for brunch. Michael's been craving your blueberry jam." After they hung up, Evelyn sat back in her chair and stared at the receiver. Not once did Denise mention the letter. Not once did she ask how she was. Sunday morning came with golden light and the smell of bread warming in the oven. Denise arrived with Michael, her husband. He smiled like always, that stiff, polite grin Evelyn had never trusted. He complimented the curtains, said the house felt so full of character. They stayed an hour, talked about traffic, vacation plans, the cost of lawn care. Then they left. No mention of selling, no mention of signatures, no mention of her. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her heart too full of questions to rest. So she got up, wrapped her robe around her shoulders, and walked down the hallway toward the back den. That's when she heard them, Denise and Michael. In the next room, unaware that Evelyn was awake, their voices were low, but not low enough. "It'll be ours soon," Michael said. "You just have to get her to sign before she forgets again." "I know," Denise replied, tired. "She's slow, but she still asks questions. We have to be careful. She won't notice if we adjust the pills a little, just enough to make her unsure." Evelyn froze. The robe slipped from her shoulder. She leaned closer, her hand covering her mouth. Denise laughed, soft and sharp. "I mean, she already thinks she forgot the vet appointment. She didn't. I moved it." Michael chuckled. "You're cold." "I'm practical," Denise said. Evelyn took a step back, her heel knocked into the doorframe. The voices stopped. "Did you hear something?" Michael asked. Evelyn turned and walked away, heart pounding, blood roaring in her ears. She returned to her room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the lamp on her nightstand. The room felt colder now, smaller, like it didn't belong to her anymore. She opened the drawer and pulled out her pill organizer. Rows of pastel capsules and tiny white tablets stared back at her. Every slot was filled, but something felt off. She couldn't explain it. The pills were the right colors, the right shapes, but not in the order she remembered. And when had they started coming in bottles without pharmacy labels? She held one up to the light, unmarked. She suddenly remembered. Denise had offered to help organize her meds a few weeks ago. Said she could make it easier. Evelyn hadn't thought much of it. Now, every bottle in her drawer had the same white cap, same plain container. She placed them back down slowly. Her hands shook. Tears welled in her eyes but didn't fall. Not yet. Instead, she stood and walked to her closet, pulled down the worn shoebox she kept on the top shelf. Inside were old prescription slips, faded but readable. She matched the doses, the timing, the colors. And what she saw confirmed it. Her daughter had changed her medication. Not a mistake, not an accident. A plan. A deliberate, cruel plan to confuse her, to make her doubt herself, to paint her as forgetful, to take what wasn't theirs. Evelyn sat back down, staring at the bottles. All this time, she thought Denise just wanted space. Now she knew. Denise wanted control. The house, the land, the title, all of it. And she didn't care what she had to do to get it, even if it meant making her own mother feel like she was losing her mind. Evelyn wiped her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. Then she stood. Because now she understood something very clearly. They weren't waiting for her to die. They were trying to make her disappear while she was still alive. Evelyn stood in the kitchen, staring at the open cabinet. She had placed the sugar jar on the second shelf, right next to the cinnamon. She always did. But now it was gone. She checked the counter, the pantry, the back porch table. Nothing. Maybe she'd already moved it. Maybe she was the one forgetting. She reached for a chair, sat down slowly, and placed her hands in her lap. This wasn't the first time. Last week, she missed her dentist appointment. She swore it was scheduled for Tuesday, but when she showed up, the receptionist gently smiled and said, "It was yesterday, Miss Thomas." And the Sunday before, she'd gone to church an hour late, insisting the clocks were wrong. At first, she thought it was grief. Maybe the years were finally catching up with her. But now, sitting alone in the quiet of her kitchen, she wasn't so sure. The sugar jar turned up 2 days later, inside the hall closet behind the cleaning rags. Denise just laughed when Evelyn told her, "Mom, you're probably just tired. You've been so forgetful lately. Maybe write things down more." Evelyn did write things down. She had a wall calendar full of notes, appointments, names, little reminders. But lately, even those felt tampered with. Phone messages erased, sticky notes missing. One day, she found her grocery list rewritten in handwriting that wasn't hers, simpler, blockier, as if someone wanted to make her feel small, helpless. The worst part? People were starting to believe it. At the church potluck, Mrs. Keller leaned in and whispered, "Heard you've been having a rough time, Evelyn. Denise says you're getting a little forgetful. Happens to the best of us." Evelyn forced a smile and nodded. But inside, something cracked. She wasn't forgetful. She wasn't confused. She was being erased. Quietly, carefully, with kind smiles and whispers behind her back. She sat in the last pew that Sunday. Didn't speak to many people. Didn't stay for cake. As she was leaving, someone called her name. "Evelyn!" It was Alma, one of the oldest members of the church. Strong-willed, honest to the bone. She had known Evelyn since her wedding day. "Been meaning to catch you," Alma said, walking briskly over. "You left early again. Everything all right?" Evelyn tried to smile. "Just tired." Alma squinted. Tired or tired of the lies? Evelyn froze. Alma folded her arms. "I've known you too long to fall for this act. What's going on?" They sat together under the old oak tree behind the church. Evelyn hesitated. Then the words spilled out. The toast, the laugh, the real estate letter, the overheard conversation, the sugar jar, the pills, Alma listened without blinking, her expression never changing. When Evelyn finally paused, Alma said quietly, "They're setting you up." Evelyn looked down. "That's what it feels like." "Because that's what it is," Alma said. "I've seen this before. Kids want the land, the money, the house, but not the woman who built it." Evelyn's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Alma took her hand. "You're not crazy. You're not slipping. You're being watched, tested, pushed just enough to doubt yourself." Evelyn's lips trembled. "But what can I do?" "You fight," Alma said simply. Evelyn looked away. "I'm tired." Alma didn't argue. She let the silence settle between them, then said something that made Evelyn's heart stop. "Your husband knew this might happen." Evelyn turned to her, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" Alma gave a knowing look. "He came to me, not long before he passed, told me he was worried Denise would try something one day. He said you were too kind, too trusting, that if anything happened to him, he wanted you to have protection." Evelyn could barely breathe. "Protection?" Alma nodded. "He left you something. Said he didn't want to scare you, but he made sure it would find you when you needed it." Evelyn's hands trembled. "What? What did he leave?" Alma squeezed her hand. "I don't know exactly, but I know he told you where to find it." Evelyn searched her memory. Her husband had always been careful, always preparing, always thinking 5 steps ahead. And then she remembered something. A conversation late one night on the porch. He had looked at her, eyes soft, voice quiet. "If something ever feels wrong, check the floorboard under the old trunk." At the time, she thought he was talking about repairs. Now she wasn't so sure. Alma stood. "Go home, Evelyn. Check that spot. And whatever's there, don't ignore it." Evelyn didn't go straight home after church. She drove around town for a while, past the old post office, the park where Denise played as a girl, the bakery she used to walk to with her husband every Sunday after service. The world outside looked the same, but inside her chest, something had shifted. A quiet fire had started to burn. When she got back to the house, she didn't take off her shoes. She walked straight down the hall, past the photos on the wall, past the linen closet, to the bedroom at the end. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the worn trunk in the corner. It was her husband's. They had bought it at a yard sale 40 years ago. He had fixed its hinges himself, sanded the wood smooth. It held their wedding photos, some old letters, and a quilt they never used. But she wasn't here for what was in the trunk. She knelt beside it and pushed it aside. The floor creaked. Her hands trembled slightly as she felt along the wooden planks, fingers searching for something, anything, out of place. Then she found it. A small notch, nearly invisible, near the back left corner. She slid her fingernail under it, tugged. The plank lifted. Underneath, wrapped in a layer of waxed cloth, was a thick envelope. She pulled it out slowly. It was heavier than it looked. On the front, in her husband's handwriting, were 4 words. For Evelyn, if needed. She sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. She turned the envelope over once, then again, then finally broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter on thick paper, and beneath it, something more. Legal documents, a copy of her husband's will. She unfolded the letter first. His handwriting filled the page, careful and steady. "My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, then something has gone wrong. I wish I were still there to protect you, but if I'm not, then know this. I've done everything I could to make sure you're safe. I never trusted Denise with the land. I wanted to, but I saw things changing in her. I saw the way she talked about the property, like it was a prize, not a legacy. This land is yours, Evelyn. You built this with me. You kept it running. You raised our daughter here. I made sure the will is airtight. I left copies with my lawyer, Mr. Hensley. His card is included. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You are not the past. You are the reason anything good ever happened in my life. Evelyn pressed her hand to her mouth. The tears came gently, not like a storm, but like quiet rain after a long drought. She set the letter down and pulled out the will. It was notarized, stamped, signed, and it clearly named Evelyn Thomas as the sole heir to the property, bank accounts, and personal belongings. There was no mention of Denise, only a single line under other beneficiaries, in her husband's familiar blunt tone. All final decisions and ownership belong to my wife, Evelyn Thomas. I trust no one else. Tucked behind the documents was a business card, cream-colored, simple. Clifford Hensley, probate and estate law. A number was printed in clean type. Evelyn stared at it, then picked up the phone. She dialed slowly, pausing after each number, as if her hand needed to catch up with her heart. The line rang once, twice, then a voice answered. Cliff Hensley speaking. Evelyn swallowed. Mr. Hensley, this is Evelyn Thomas. My husband was William Thomas. You might remember. There was a pause, then his voice softened. Mrs. Thomas, he said. I've been waiting for this call for a long time. Evelyn sat across from Mr. Hensley in his quiet, book-lined office. The clock ticked softly in the background. Faint light filtered in through a dusty window. It was the kind of space that made you feel both safe and nervous at the same time. Mr. Hensley wore a brown vest, wire-rimmed glasses, and a look that said he'd seen too many families torn apart by paperwork. He glanced through the will she'd brought him, nodding slowly, carefully. This is solid, he said, tapping the signature line with his finger. Your husband did this right. The notary stamp, the witness signature, it's all here. Evelyn folded her hands in her lap. Then why does it feel like I'm already losing everything? Mr. Hensley sighed and leaned back in his chair. Because someone moved faster. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and slid it toward her. This, he said, was filed by your daughter 2 months after your husband passed. Evelyn opened it. Her name was there, listed as grantor. A document labeled Power of Attorney sat on top, signed and dated. Not by her. She blinked. That's not my signature. I know, Mr. Hensley said. It's a forgery. A poor one. But most clerks don't question paperwork unless they're given a reason. Evelyn stared at the page. Why would she do this? Mr. Hensley was quiet for a moment. Then he said what she already feared. She's been trying to transfer the deed. First slowly, getting appraisals, testing boundaries. But with that fake power of attorney, she could have moved everything out from under you without you even knowing. Evelyn's breath caught. I thought she just wanted the house, but this is more. This is control, Mr. Hensley said. She wanted legal control of your decisions, your health, your property, your future. Evelyn sat back in the chair, a wave of nausea rising in her stomach. Her own daughter, her own blood, and she hadn't seen it coming. She remembered Denise as a little girl, running barefoot through the tall grass, picking wildflowers, sleeping on her daddy's chest after long days. Where had that child gone? I trusted her, Evelyn whispered. I didn't question a thing. Mr. Hensley leaned forward. You're not weak, you're trusting. And that's not a flaw. It's what makes this so wrong. Evelyn didn't answer. She just nodded. Slowly, like her heart was catching up to what her eyes could now see. Mr. Hensley continued, flipping through the folder. She's already spoken to 3 real estate agents, 2 banks, 1 probate officer. She's been laying a trail, making you look like you've given her full permission. Evelyn pressed her hand against her chest. It's all lies, she said. I didn't sign anything. I believe you, Mr. Hensley said. And now we prove it. He stood and walked to a small cabinet, pulled out a new file. Here's what we're going to do. He laid out the steps in order. They'd gather all the paperwork she had, from medical records to witness statements to the original will. They'd request a handwriting analysis to compare the forged signature to her real one. They'd call on Alma and anyone else who could testify to Evelyn's state of mind, her routine, her history. And then, they'd file for full probate intervention. She's going to push back, Mr. Hensley warned. People like her always do. She'll cry, she'll lie, she'll make you out to be unstable, confused, paranoid. Evelyn gave a sad smile. She already has. He looked at her. Then we stop her now, before she takes another step. Evelyn nodded, firmer this time. I'm ready. But inside, she was trembling. Not from fear of Denise, but from the heartbreak that came with fighting your own child for something that never should have been in question. She stood, gathering her purse. I'll bring you everything, she said. Notes, dates, letters, whatever you need. Mr. Hensley walked her to the door. You're stronger than she thinks, he said gently. She's been moving fast, hoping you'd stay quiet. Evelyn turned, her eyes steady now. I've stayed quiet long enough, he smiled, then paused before opening the door. There's one more thing, he said. This isn't something we can settle quietly. Evelyn looked up. What do you mean? Mr. H. Hensley straightened his tie and said, We'll need to take this to probate court, and you'll need to testify. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Evelyn was pruning the rose bushes out front, her hands in thick gloves, when the phone rang inside. She wiped her hands on her apron and answered. Hey, Mom! Denise's voice chimed on the other end, bright, sweet, like sugar coating something rotten. Evelyn held the phone to her ear without speaking at first. Then, Hi, sweetheart. I was thinking, Denise continued. It's been too long since we've had a real family dinner. Nothing fancy, just the usual birthday crowd. You know how Michael loves your cornbread. Evelyn glanced at the kitchen window. She could see her reflection faintly, older, wiser, sharper. Sounds lovely, she said. Denise sounded almost surprised. Great. We'll do it this Sunday, 6 o'clock. Don't worry about bringing anything, just yourself. Evelyn smiled softly. I'll be there. When she hung up, she didn't exhale right away. She walked to her desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a thin envelope. Inside were copies of the forged documents, the original will, and the court summons prepared by Mr. Hensley. Everything was ready. All she had to do now was deliver it. The days leading up to the dinner passed like a slow, careful dance. Evelyn spent her mornings gathering records, sorting dates, building her file. Mr. Hensley had assigned a handwriting analyst, and Alma was gathering church members willing to write statements about Evelyn's clarity and memory. But Evelyn moved quietly, like fog curling along a field. She didn't call Denise. She didn't mention the court case. She simply smiled and waited. Sunday evening arrived with the smell of rain in the air. Evelyn, dressed in a dark green blouse, ironed slacks, and her silver locket, the one her husband had given her on their 20th anniversary. She tucked the envelope into her purse. When she arrived at Denise's home, the porch lights glowed like Nato. Hing was wrong. Denise greeted her with open arms. Mom, you look great. Evelyn stepped into the house. Thank you, dear. Inside, the table was set for 8. Candles flickered, laughter echoed from the kitchen, and music played low in the background. Michael poured wine. Denise floated between conversations, complimenting everyone, cracking jokes. Evelyn sat at the far end of the table, her hands calm, her smile polite. The meal began with warm bread and olive oil. They talked about weather, work, weekend plans. No one mentioned the property. No one mentioned the court. But beneath the surface, the air was thick with knowing. Every word felt like a thread pulled tight. Denise leaned in with a laugh and said, "Mom, I hope you're writing down your recipes. Can't have the next generation going hungry without that peach cobbler." Evelyn smiled. "Don't worry. Some things are written down where they count." Michael grinned. "Speaking of that, you still keeping up with your bills and paperwork, Evelyn? Don't want to fall behind." She looked at him evenly. "I stay on top of what matters." The salad was served, then the roast. More stories, more smiles. Every one of Denise's friends offered kind words, light questions, but Evelyn could feel it. The undercurrent. They were keeping her comfortable, until they didn't have to. Denise refilled Evelyn's water and said, "I'm so glad you're here tonight. You've always been such a quiet, steady presence." Evelyn tilted her head. "Quiet isn't the same as blind." There was a brief pause. Michael coughed. Denise laughed too quickly. "Of course not, Mom. I just mean, you're reliable. Strong." Evelyn folded her napkin neatly on her lap. She looked around the table. Each face was smiling. Each hand rested close to a wine glass or a fork. She reached into her purse, pulled out the envelope, and laid it gently beside her plate. Denise noticed first. "What's that?" Evelyn pushed it toward her, slow and calm. "It's for you," she said. Denise opened it without thinking. She scanned the top page. Then her face froze. Michael leaned over. His eyes narrowed. Subpoena. Denise's fingers tightened on the paper. "What is this?" Evelyn took a sip of water, then placed her glass down with care. "I'll see you in court." The courtroom was quiet, almost too quiet. Evelyn sat in the front row beside Mr. Hensley, her hands folded in her lap, her shoulders straight. She wore her Sunday best, a navy blouse, pearl earrings, and the same silver locket that had rested against her chest through every heartbreak so far. Across the aisle, Denise sat at a table with her lawyer, flipping through papers with a forced smile. Michael sat behind her, arms crossed, lips tight. The judge entered, an older man with a stern face and calm eyes. Everyone rose. Evelyn took a slow breath. This was it. The moment her truth would no longer be a whisper in the kitchen or a conversation under an oak tree. This was where it would be heard, out loud, with no more hiding. The case began with opening statements. Denise's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, we are here today because our client, Denise Harper, is concerned about the mental well-being of her mother, Evelyn Thomas. Mrs. Thomas has displayed several signs of confusion, forgetfulness, and disorientation in recent months. My client has acted out of care and responsibility." Evelyn didn't blink. Then it was Mr. Hensley's turn. "Your Honor, my client is here today not to defend her mind, but to defend her name, her land, and her late husband's wishes. What you'll hear today is not confusion. It's betrayal." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Denise was called to the stand first. She looked the part, calm, concerned, hands folded just right. "My mother has always been a strong woman," she began. "But lately, she's been slipping. She misses appointments. She calls me twice in one day and forgets we already spoke. She leaves burners on. I was worried." Mr. Hensley stood. "Do you have medical proof of these claims?" Denise hesitated. "Well, no. but it's obvious if you spend time with her. Has she been diagnosed with any condition? No, but I was trying to get her help. She wouldn't let me. Help? Or control? Denise stiffened. I was trying to protect her. Mr. Hensley walked slowly to the evidence table. He held up the forged power of attorney document. Did you file this with the probate office 2 months after your father's death? Denise glanced at her lawyer. Yes, I thought it was what she wanted. Did she sign it? She must have. Please answer clearly. Denise's voice faltered. I don't remember. Because she didn't sign it, Mr. Hensley said. We have verified handwriting analysis confirming this is a forgery. Gasps fluttered through the room. Michael shifted in his seat. Evelyn sat still. The judge raised an eyebrow. Continue. Now it was Evelyn's turn. She walked slowly to the witness stand, her steps steady. She sat, looked at the judge, and then at Denise. My daughter thinks I'm confused, she said softly. She says I forget things. And I do, sometimes. I forget to water the hydrangeas. I forget what day the trash goes out. A few chuckles in the room. But I haven't forgotten who I am, or what my husband left me, or what my daughter tried to take. She reached into her bag and handed Mr. Hensley a folder. Medical reports, he said, passing it to the clerk. Certified evaluations from 2 physicians. No cognitive decline, no memory loss, no diagnosis of concern. The judge reviewed them silently. Let's talk about the will, Mr. Hensley said. Evelyn nodded. My husband left everything to me, not because he didn't love our daughter, but because he trusted me to carry our legacy. He told me where to find the will. He left me a letter. He even warned me. Warned you? She nodded again. He thought she might try something. And what happened when you found out? Evelyn took a breath. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I gathered truth. Slowly, quietly. Alma was called to testify next. She stood tall, clear-voiced. I've known Evelyn for over 40 years, Alma said. She runs her own errands. She remembers every prayer request at church. And when she told me what was happening, I knew right away. This wasn't confusion. This was a setup. Denise's lawyer objected. That's an opinion, not a fact. Sustained, the judge said. But the message had landed. Mr. Hensley returned to his seat and glanced at Evelyn. She nodded slightly. It was enough. The judge shuffled through the stack of papers before him. Silence settled over the courtroom like dust. Then he cleared his throat. This case has raised several questions about character, intent, and truth. He lifted a single sheet of paper from the file. But before I make any decisions, I'd like to read something Mr. Thomas filed before his death. The courtroom was still. No coughs, no whispers, no shifting in seats. Just the quiet hum of tension in the air as the judge unfolded the paper in his hands. It looked old, creased down the center, the ink slightly faded, but still legible. Evelyn held her breath. She hadn't known about the letter. Mr. Hensley hadn't either. It had been sealed in the probate file, marked confidential, and submitted by her husband just weeks before his passing. The judge cleared his throat and began to read. To whom it may concern, my name is William Thomas, and if you're reading this, I am no longer alive. I've spent my life with one woman, Evelyn. She is my wife, my partner, and the heart of everything I built. This land, this home, our savings, and every scrap of peace I've found in this world is because of her. She never asked for much. She gave more than anyone ever deserved. But I've seen what's coming. My daughter, Denise, has changed. Not overnight, but over the years. Entitlement has crept into her tone. Greed hides behind her smiles. She speaks of this house as if it were already hers. She talks about the LA and like it's a business move. not a home. I love my daughter, but I do not trust her to honor what Evelyn and I built. I fear that after I'm gone, Denise will attempt to claim what doesn't belong to her. She will twist facts. She will test boundaries. And if Evelyn is too kind or too quiet, Denise will try to erase her entirely. So let this letter be my final word. This land belongs to Evelyn, no one else. If she has brought this forward, then she must be under attack. And if so, let it be known. I planned for this. I chose Evelyn not just as my wife, but as my legacy. Signed, William E. Thomas. The judge folded the letter gently and placed it on the bench. The silence that followed felt sacred. Evelyn stared ahead, unmoving, but her throat tightened. Her husband's words had reached her, from beyond the grave. And he had known. He had seen this storm coming. And even in death, he had stood between her and the fire. Across the room, Denise's face was pale. Her hands clutched the edge of the table, her nails digging into the wood. Michael leaned away slightly, as if the weight of the truth had finally become too much. Mr. Hensley gave Evelyn a quiet nod, one of respect and resolve. Alma dabbed her eyes with a tissue from her purse. The judge looked up. His expression was steady, measured. But behind his eyes, something had shifted, something Evelyn hadn't seen before in all the proceedings. It was certainty, finality. He placed his hand on the file before him. "Mrs. Thomas," he said, "you've shown this court not only evidence, but character. Your composure, your truthfulness, and the integrity of your late husband's documentation leave no question as to what is real." Denise opened her mouth, but her lawyer placed a hand gently on her arm. She didn't speak. The judge continued. "This case is more than a legal dispute. It is a reflection of what happens when love is taken for granted. The hen legacy is viewed as entitlement instead of stewardship, and when kindness is mistaken for weakness." He paused, looked around the room, then locked eyes with Evelyn. "I am ready to issue my ruling." The judge leaned forward slightly in his chair, hands folded across the file. Evelyn didn't move. Her heart was pounding, but her face remained calm, stoic, like the trees outside that had stood through every storm. "In review of the documentation, the medical records, the witness testimony, and the letter submitted by the late Mr. Thomas," the judge began, "this court finds no legal basis for the transfer of power of attorney that was filed by Ms. Denise Harper." There was a stir in the courtroom. Denise's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Michael's foot tapped nervously on the floor. Evelyn stayed quiet, eyes focused forward. The judge continued, firm and clear. "We have determined that the document in question was not only unauthorized, but fraudulent. In addition, the attempt to sell or transfer land ownership, while under false legal authority, constitutes an abuse of intent and attempted exploitation." He looked directly at Denise. "You are fortunate, Ms. Harper, that Mrs. Thomas chose to pursue this matter through legal means rather than criminal charges." Denise dropped her gaze. The judge turned back to Evelyn. "Therefore, all rights, ownership, and authority related to the property, estate, and financial accounts of Mr. William Thomas shall remain, without dispute, in the name of Mrs. Evelyn Thomas." Mr. Hensley placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's arm. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply nodded once, the way her husband used to when something important had just been said, and there was nothing more to add. The judge wasn't finished. "In addition, the court is imposing a fine of $25,000 to be paid by Ms. Harper and her husband for attempted fraud and costs related to legal processing and documentation recovery." Michael stood up, startled. "Wait, we don't have—" The judge raised a hand. You may file for appeal, but considering the evidence, I advise you not to waste the quotem. It's time. He banged the gavel softly. This court is adjourned. Evelyn stood slowly. The courtroom remained hushed as she gathered her purse, straightened her shoulders, and turned toward the exit. People stepped aside for her. Even the clerk gave her a small nod of respect. Denise didn't look at her. Neither did Michael. But Evelyn didn't need them to. She wasn't walking for their approval. She was walking for herself, for her husband, for every woman who'd been told she was too old, too tired, or too confused to own what she'd earned. Outside the courthouse, the breeze was cool. Alma stood waiting, arms open. Evelyn stepped into the hug, finally allowing her body to sag just a little. You did it, Alma whispered. Evelyn nodded against her shoulder. We did. Reporters tried to get her attention, snapping photos and asking questions. Mrs. Thomas, do you have anything to say? Do you plan to press charges? Will you be keeping the property? Evelyn held up a hand, polite but firm. No comment, she said gently. This wasn't for headlines. This was for healing. She climbed into Mr. Hensley's car, and they rode in silence for a while, the small Georgia town passing by in patches of farmland, gas stations, and corner diners. You handled yourself with grace, Mr. Hensley said finally. Evelyn looked out the window. There's no joy in winning a fight you never wanted to have. No, but there is peace in knowing you didn't let yourself be erased. Evelyn smiled faintly. Yes, there is that. They pulled into the parking lot of his office. He unlocked the door and let her in. She stood in the middle of the room for a moment, staring at the same wall of books she'd seen the first time she came. Only now she felt different. Not smaller, but taller, more rooted, like a tree that had held through a hard wind. Mr. Hensley set down his briefcase and turned to her. Is there anything else I can help you with, Mrs. Thomas? Evelyn reached into her purse. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't old or faded. It was new. Blank. She laid it on his desk. Yes, she said softly. The pen in Evelyn's hand felt heavier than it used to. Not because she was tired, but because what it carried mattered. She sat across from Mr. Hensley one final time, the new will spread open on the polished oak desk between them. Each line was clear, deliberate, and hers. No tricks, no forgeries, no power of attorney stamped in haste. Just the truth, neatly typed, signed in ink, witnessed by the law. Mr. Hensley adjusted his glasses. All right, we're ready when you are. Evelyn looked down at the paper and then at the line that bore her name, and just below it, the name she'd chosen to carry it all forward. Lily Ann Harper, her granddaughter. The only one who had visited with no motive, no scheme. The one who sat with her when the pain flared in her joints. Who helped trim the garden when the hedges got wild. Who didn't speak of the land like it was an investment, but like it was home. Evelyn pressed the pen to paper and signed. Her hand was steady. The moment she lifted the pen, she felt it. Not a celebration, not relief, but something deeper, like closing the final page of a book written with her whole life. Mr. Hensley stamped the document and slid it into a manila folder. That's it, he said. It's official. Evelyn gave a slow, soft smile. Good. She stood and reached for her coat. He walked her out, the morning sun warming the brick path outside his office. If you need anything else, he said, I'm just a phone call away. I know, she said. She paused at the door and looked at him. Thank you, Mr. Hensley. You didn't just help me keep what was mine. You helped me remember who I am." He gave a humble nod. "It was always in you, Evelyn. You just needed someone to remind you." The gravel crunched under her tires as she pulled back into the long driveway. The house came into view slowly, wide, white-paneled, and surrounded by the land that had seen every portion of her life. She stepped out of the car and stood for a moment, breathing it in. The smell of grass and earth, the sound of wind rustling through the trees. It was all still hers. Not because someone gave it to her, but because she never gave it away. The porch steps creaked the same way they always had. She poured herself a glass of sweet tea, sat down on the old swing, and rocked slowly, the chains squeaking in rhythm with the breeze. Lily would be coming by later. She didn't know about the will yet. Evelyn wanted to tell her in person, face to face, like important things ought to be said. A bird landed on the railing, chirped once, flew off. She smiled. On the small table beside her sat a box of new signs she'd had printed. Just one, really, but she'd ordered a backup, just in case the wind ever blew it down. She picked it up and ran her fingers over the letters. Thomas Land, owned by Evelyn, guarded by Grace. It felt right. It felt final. It felt free. Later that evening, Lily arrived with a smile and a bag of groceries. "Grandma, I brought pie, and I found that herbal tea you like." Evelyn grinned. "You spoil me. You deserve it." They sat on the porch together, sharing pie and stories. As the sun dipped lower, turning the sky gold, Evelyn reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a folded letter. She handed it to Lily. "What's this?" Lily asked, curious. "Just something I needed to do." Lily opened it and read silently. Her eyes widened, then watered. "Grandma," Evelyn took her hand. "You never asked me for anything. You just showed up. You helped. You cared. And you never treated me like I was fading." Lily wiped a tear from her cheek. "I love you. That's all I ever wanted to do." Evelyn smiled. "And that's why this land will carry your name after I'm gone. Because you didn't try to take it. You earned it by giving." They sat in silence for a while after that, watching the light dance across the fields. Then Lily stood. "Want me to put the sign up?" Evelyn nodded. "Please." They walked to the front gate together. Lily knelt down, planted the stake firmly in the ground, and secured the new wooden sign. The letters shone bright in the soft dusk. Thomas Land, owned by Evelyn, guarded by Grace. It stood tall and proud, like the woman who had earned it. Evelyn stepped back and looked out over the land. Her land. Every fence post, every rock, every line in the dirt. They were hers. Because she didn't let herself be erased. She didn't crumble when they called her old. She didn't fold when they tried to make her doubt her worth. She fought, not with noise or cruelty, but with facts, with strength, with quiet fire. The stars began to peek out above them. Lily wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "You okay?" she asked softly. Evelyn nodded. "I'm more than okay." She looked back one last time at the sign, then at the house she'd once built with her bare hands, and a man who had loved her all the way to the end. "My daughter called me the past, but now the land, and the truth, carry my name."